Welcome, everybody, to a special post-game edition of All In with Art Stapleton, the New York Giants podcast brought to you by NorthJersey.com and The Record. I'm your host, Art Stapleton. I am coming to you from a suite here at Soldier Field in windy, snowy, rainy, and for the New York Giants, downright crappy Chicago. And Giants fans, here's what struck me after this 24-20 loss, the fourth in a row for this team. And we'll get into where they're at. But right now it's hard to say anything other than this is a broken team right now. The Giants are broken. And I remember John Mara saying from 2014 that they had a broken offense, and that's why Kevin Gilbride was let go as offensive coordinator. That's why Ben McAdoo came in, and going all the way back to that time. It's broken. And we're talking broken dreams because after the Giants beat the Eagles at MetLife Stadium, which seems like 4 seasons ago, and it really wasn't that long ago, everything felt like it was promise, and everything was right out in front for the New York Giants. And then they proceeded to go to Denver and have the collapse, and it was broken hearts. Everybody's heart was broken as far as the Giants and where they were at. Then you have the broken spirit game, and that was when Cam Scatterbo got hurt in Philly. So 4 straight losses. We come to today, and it was almost like Jaxson Dart was Atlas, and they were putting so much weight on his shoulders. Everything was on Jaxson Dart's shoulders, and no Scatterbo. Obviously, Malik Neighbors, it seems like that happened 3 years ago that he was injured and tore his ACL. And the dam finally broke today. And unfortunately, Jaxson Dart goes out with a concussion, which everyone wants to talk about how we knew it was going to happen. It was going to happen. It was only a matter of time. Well, the reality is it happened. And if you want to place accountability for where they're at and where the Giants are, it starts at the top. And everybody is accountable at this point. And no one should be safe. It's apparent that no one is safe from the broken reality of the Giants, which is part of the column that I ended up writing on NorthJersey.com. But nobody is safe because of what is transpiring. 4 games in which the Giants led by double digits, they've now lost on the road. New Orleans, Denver, keep adding up. The way these games just get tossed away and how they lose. Dallas, and then obviously today in Chicago. This was not a game that the Chicago Bears deserved to win. This was not a game that the New York Giants deserved to lose. And yet, 2-8. That's what they are. So let's talk. Let's try to break this down into a couple different segments. One has to be the Jaxson Dart scenario, okay? The Jaxson Dart scenario. On the fumble, from what I saw, it looked like in replays he hit his head on the turf here. Now, it's not turf, it's grass, but hit his head on the ground, came off, went right to the bench, was not in the medical tent, was not buzzed down from up above to be able to get a concussion check. So he was not checked for a concussion in that situation. He comes back out there for the next series. They have 2 plays before the end of the third quarter. So we're in a commercial break. They have to come all the way back down here to the other end of the field. And then you look and you see down, and sometimes it's funny because Russell Wilson sometimes warms up regardless, and all of a sudden Russell Wilson is going onto the field. Now, Brian Daboll said that when they were talking on the sideline, getting ready between the third and fourth quarters, they could just tell something wasn't right with Jaxson. And they decided to call over the medical team to take him and bring him in to the medical tent to go over the concussion protocol with the third-party independent neurologist. And obviously, we know what happened. Jaxson he failed the first step, basically, of concussion protocol. And then the player has to go into the locker room and they continue that testing. Now, very rarely do you go from failing that first step to going into the locker room and then getting cleared by not having a concussion. So as soon as that happened, you knew Jaxson Dart was going to be out. Couple things. One, this does not automatically mean that Jaxson Dart is now out for an extended period of time. The concussion protocol comes down to symptoms. So they will see how he feels tomorrow. They will see how he feels on Tuesday. And then it goes into those phases of working with the training staff, then a non-contact practice, then essentially a full contact practice. But for a quarterback, he's wearing the red jersey for a full non-contact. So they're obviously not going to rush Jaxson Dart. But I saw Jaxson Dart in the locker room. He was packing things up, leaving. Obviously, he's got to leave without talking to the media while they're in concussion protocol. Players are not allowed to talk to the media. So it was the Russell Wilson show. Now, this is kind of intertwined with the Brian Daboll job security situation and everything else with Shane Bowen, and everybody wants to. Personally, this is not a Joe Shane situation right now. So leave Joe Shane out of this right now. But you're looking at this team, and if you're ownership and you're seeing the last 4 weeks go down the way the last 4 weeks went down, you now have 4 games in which you lost a double-digit lead. There is a culpability factor for the head coach and for his staff. Do I know that Brian Daboll is going to get fired between now and the end of the season? No, I don't. Do I think he's going to get fired? I don't. Not at this moment. I've said all along, and I'm trying to stay consistent with that as far as let's see where they are in January and then go from there. I know there have been these scenarios that have been tossed around. The idea of, number one, if Daboll was fired, let Mike Kafka take over on an interim basis, see where he's at. Maybe he can audition for a head coaching position, if not here, elsewhere. This is all, to me, fantasy booking, so to speak. Pull out of my WWE fandom. I don't know if ownership is looking and holding Daboll accountable for what's happened here in these games. I know a lot of fans believe that he should be, but I just don't know the timetable. I don't know if there's a thirst to fire the head coach today, tomorrow. I know there was the report about Daboll was going to get fired out of Denver. Everything I've been told, that was incorrect. And if it was told to somebody through a source, and I'll say it, Sean Marash, a friend of mine at WFAN, I have no doubt that he was told by someone that he considers a good source that John Mara wanted to fire Brian Daboll after Denver. But what I will say is, number one, John Mara is still undergoing treatment for cancer. He was not on the trip in Denver. So you're telling me a week after the Giants picked up their biggest regular season win in how long by beating the Eagles, the following week, John Mara was going to be so angry at losing in Denver that he was going to fire Brian Daboll? I just don't buy it. Again, it's not about the validity of the report. I just don't buy what that source may have told Sean Marash or anyone else about Daboll's job security. What I can tell you is that I am here in Chicago. I walked in that locker room. This team was crushed today. Crushed. To see Jaxson Dart have to go out that way. And I know some people, some reporters, some fans hold Brian Daboll responsible for Jaxson Dart and the way he plays. It is a double-edged sword. And I don't care what anyone says, that's what I believe. You want Jaxson Dart to play the way he plays. You obviously do not want him taking extra punishment. It is a balance that needs to be struck as Dart moves forward in his career. You do not want to get him in a situation where he is having head injuries every week. And again, I'm not a doctor, but you can speculate all you want about 4 previous times Dart was put in the tent to be checked out for concussions. Yes, he's taking hits in his body. I'm not willing to say, that he had concussions and they just missed it. I don't believe that's the case. So the reality today, the broken reality, is that Jaxson Dart is on the shelf. How long that lasts, I'm not sure. But this team is unwatchable if Jaxson Dart is not on the field offensively. So I know some of you want to know what to do. So how do the Giants proceed? Well, number one, if Jaxson Dart does not have symptoms, and you can you could fail concussion protocol and not necessarily have a concussion or have serious concussion symptoms. I don't know that right now. I don't know where Jaxson Dart is as far as his symptoms go. So you just have to see moving forward here. And if he's well enough to play and he gets cleared, he's going to play. At least that's my opinion. Now, if Jaxson Dart is out, what that means is Russell Wilson conceivably would be number 1 and Jameis Winston would bump up to the backup. Remember, Jameis Winston, by being the emergency third quarterback on the inactive list, means he dresses for the game, but he can't play until injuries to Jaxson Dart and Russell Wilson. If he's active, that's no longer the case. So you could conceivably, against Green Bay next Sunday, if Jaxson Dart is out, start Russell Wilson, but then go right to Jameis Winston if Russell Wilson is not effective. But that's putting the cart before the horse. That's one of those things where that's what we know right now. So let's go to the other thing. In my heart of hearts, I just don't think that they are going to fire Brian Daboll before the end of the season. Unless ownership has a real problem with the way Daboll is handling Dart in games. And I know people say that. It's a concern. He's getting him hurt. He's getting him this. He's getting him that. There's a reason why before the trade deadline we talked about getting Jaxson Dart more weapons, because more and more was placed on his shoulders out here. You saw it today. The guy was carrying this team to what would have been a win. I am confident in that. They would have won this game had Jaxson Dart been healthy. Let's get to the play down at the goal line. They settle for the field goal. They take the field goal. Younghoe Koo makes it. They go up 20-10. There's a penalty on the play. If they take the 3 points off the board and then they go for it on fourth and inches on goal at the goal line, and they don't get that touchdown, or let's play hypotheticals, right? Because the Giants are all about hypotheticals and Murphy's Law. Let's say they line up to do something and someone jumps offside, someone jumps and is a false start. So they go back and now Koo misses the field goal. Then what? Then Daboll took 3 points off the board. So in that situation, I have no problem. You get a 10-point lead. This defense with 10 minutes left, with the way they had been playing against Caleb Williams and this offense, win the game. Go win it. I mean, gosh, it's not rocket science here. Win the game. You're up 10 points with 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. I mean, it's mind-boggling to think that we jumped through so many hoops trying to figure out, what Dable should have done, what Dable did. They made it a 10-point game, 2 possessions in bad weather. You're telling me that Caleb Williams, who had done nothing in this game, that was going to all of a sudden mount this comeback against this defense? I call BS. And yet they allowed it to happen. Part of the problem was that they were just not functioning offensively. They couldn't function with Russell Wilson. And it's sad to see it happen that way. It really is. But everyone knew why they went from Russell Wilson to Jaxson Dart. That's why Jaxson Dart is playing. So this idea that all of a sudden Jaxson Dart is going to go out, Russell Wilson's going to come in, and this offense all of a sudden is going to start lighting it up and down the field, it just wasn't going to happen. Remember, the week 2 offense that Russell Wilson operated against a really, really bad Dallas defense had Malik Neighbors. This team doesn't have Malik Neighbors. Darius Slayton seemed to be tightening up today. He had a great first half. He's tightening up. Gunnar Olszewski's coming out and running, routes at the X for Darius Slayton. Gunnar. They had Gunnar, Wandell out there at receiver and Slayton. I mean, what are we talking about here? Ray McLeod. Look at what Jaxson Dart was doing with them today. Jaxson Dart, just his strictly numbers, when you look at what Jaxson Dart did, 19 of 29 for 242. Okay? And 2 rushing touchdowns, 66 yards rushing. And now he's got 10 touchdown passes, 7 touchdown runs in 7 starts. Again, I hope Jaxson Dart is back on the practice field on Wednesday and he's feeling better and he's progressing through concussion protocol. That is the priority right now. People are going to lose jobs. It's going to happen. I think that's kind of that misconception. I wanted the entire season to play out, to be able to say definitively in January, this isn't working anymore. Well, I leave here in Chicago today saying, if Jaxson Dart's not on the field, this isn't working anymore. It's not. And that's it. Whether you want to say you were first, that Dable should have been fired, and this one and that one, and Shane Bowen and everything else. This is the first time today where we got to see, not only do you see the future of this franchise go out with a concussion. Can't happen. It cannot happen. It's unacceptable that was allowed to happen. But number 2, it's the same problems with this defense. That is the problem. That is the big problem. You gave this defense a 10-point lead against a quarterback that could not throw the football. For a head coach in Ben Johnson today that for some reason decided that he wanted to audition like he was an offensive coordinator and show that he was a play-calling whiz. I can't believe the Bears only ran the ball, let's see, outside of Caleb Williams, Swift had 13 carries and Kyle Monangai had 7. That's 20 carries. And then 8 rushes for Caleb Williams. that number should have been close to 40, maybe even in the first half. That's how crazy this game plan was for Chicago. And the weather was bad. So you're talking about bad weather here and the reality of them wanting to all of a sudden throw the football everywhere. I mean, this is what we get when we're trying to record here in a suite at Soldier Field. I don't know if the flushing was kind of the toilet flushing was the comment about Ben Johnson's play calling, but they deserve to lose this game today. Good teams find a way to win, but you know what? Even more so, bad teams find a way to lose. And this is a bad, bad team that anticipates what's the next thing that's going to happen to us to cause us to lose. Think about it. What did Jaxson Dart say last Sunday? Waiting for the next play. Waiting for one play to lead to the next. And it finally got Jaxson Dart now. Now the emptiness of a franchise, now you have to worry about it. I mean, thankfully, again, a concussion is a serious injury. So don't get me wrong here. You do not want a pattern of concussions. You do not want this to be a habit. You hope that Jaxson Dart is feeling better tomorrow, even tonight, later this week, and he can get back out there on the field. But a concussion is a hidden injury. You see what happened to Malik Neighbors and the injury he had with the torn ACL, and it's right up in your face. You see it, and you're like, yeah. What happened to Cam Scatterbo? That injury, it's hard to watch. And then a defined timeline for their recovery. With Jaxson Dart with the concussions, it's not a let's just shake it off and get out there again. They got to take it seriously. And again, it sucks that happened. And I know there are a lot of people out there who said it's going to happen. And unfortunately, they were right. So, I've tried to be as professional as possible and not go down the road of start putting together head coaching candidate lists and figuring out what's going to happen next. But if the Giants were to move on from Brian Daboll, you have two different situations. One, you need a head coach that's going to be able to eradicate this franchise of the idea that Brian Daboll was not accountable enough, did not hold his players accountable enough. Whether that's true or false behind the scenes, on the field, it looks like that, especially the last 4 weeks. It's hard to shake that once that becomes your label, even if it's not true. So if they're looking for a head coach that way, that has to be a priority here. You need to have a head coach who can get rid of that immediately, that idea that you're being taken advantage of kind of thing. And the other thing is it's Jaxson Dart. Look, I'm leery of breaking up this offensive coaching staff with Daboll, Kafka, Shea Tierney, Chad Hall for Jaxson Dart, because it's obvious that Jaxson Dart has thrived under this. But I can't fight the notion that another coach couldn't come in and do as good or a better job with Jaxson Dart. I could be sold that this is where Jaxson Dart is. That's why I was giving the final 8 games of this season to say, let's see where we're at in January. But when Dart gets injured the way he did today, and the team just essentially goes in the tank, it's a hard argument. It's a hard argument. If I was John Mara and Steve Tisch, I'd have a very hard time selling to my families that status quo is here. Now, does that mean Joe Shane stays as general manager? I think you have a much better chance of keeping the personnel department the way it is and focusing on the coaching staff. And I don't know if that matters tomorrow. I don't know if that happens tomorrow or in a week or in 2 weeks. I think they want to wait until January. I think they have a lot of respect for Brian Daboll and his coaches, and they want to give him every opportunity to be able to turn this around. But when you lose 4 games on the road in the midst of an 11-game road losing streak that goes back to last season, no team in the history of the Giants has ever lost 11 games in a row on the road. That's hard to overcome. It is hard to overcome. And right now, you don't even have Jaxson Dart on the field that you can count on for next weekend right now to save this coaching regime. So, again, I'm not privy to conversations that are happening behind the scenes between Steve Tisch, who was here, John Mara, who was not. And I'll make this plea again. Guys, John Mara didn't put out a statement a month ago that he was battling cancer just because he felt like it. He's in for a battle of his life right now. He's battling for his life. I'm not trying to be too dramatic, but that's the reality of it. He's undergoing chemo and radiation and trying to get back healthy. Now, if he can't do the job and feels like he can't do the job, then they would probably put someone to do the job. But you got to keep that in mind as the backdrop here. Everybody wants this decision to be made now, right now. I want Daboll fired now. I want Shane Bowen fired now. That's not the way the Giants have always done business here. And again, I get it. There are people who don't like the way the Giants do business, and I understand it. I didn't grow up a fan of the New York Giants, but I will tell you this. When they did it this way and they won Super Bowls, you all loved it. You all became Giants fans because of the way they handled themselves. Because they didn't fire a coach like George Steinbrenner would do all the time. That's the reality of it. So, just saying, I wouldn't be surprised if they wait until the end of the season and they say, okay, here's where we're at. Now, if they feel as though this is now affecting current players or the health of current players, namely Jaxson Dart, well, then they might make a change. They might. Just to say, you know what, we need to protect our investment as the franchise quarterback. But what coach is not going to want to use Jaxson Dart the way the Giants are using him? This is his skill. Yes, does he have to be smarter? Sure. Sure, you want him to protect himself more. But it takes away something as to the way he plays. And I think he's going to learn, and maybe now is the time where he starts learning, is that there are times to be able to go and do that, and then there are other risks. I mean, let's not forget. Look at the beating Eli Manning took as a rookie. Does anyone remember the big hit against the Eagles or what happened to Eli against the Ravens? Again, I'm not saying that's the way Jaxson Dart should play, but Eli certainly tested that theory early on in that in that season. So that's where we're at. We'll be all over it. Again, I'm in here in Chicago. I hope to be able to get our flight off tomorrow morning and head on back to New Jersey. And then we'll be all in, as usual, on the Giants and Packers. We may have Aaron Nagler of Cheesehead TV. We'll talk a lot about what Green Bay has going on. They play the Eagles tomorrow night. So before I sign off, shout out to Paul Wood's daughter Emma and her New Jersey Rage club team came up second place today in the fall end of season Heat tournament, Howell, New Jersey. So it was called on the count of weather. Little birdie told me that Emma was up there ready to come through with a big hit that would have gotten the Rage in front and the lead. But unfortunately, they weren't given the opportunity because they called the game because of weather. So hats off to Emma and the Rage. Now that softball season, softball season's still going. I can't believe it. Fall tournaments now. It's crazy. But again, shout out to the Rage. Shout out to all the guys at K-12. Maybe we'll get a chance to see you at some point coming soon. And then, of course, it's basketball season for producer Paul Wood and everybody else. So it's just it's where we go. Do we have anything left in the football season? Giants fans, I'll be all over it the best we can. So for Paul Wood, I'm Art Stapleton. We are all in here in Chicago. We appreciate you being all in. And we will be back later this week, hopefully with more clarity on Jaxson Dart and see where the Giants go from here. Final score, 24-20, Chicago Bears over the New York Giants.